They said they wanted me there, promised it wouldn't feel the same without me. "Fly out, Grandma. We want you here for Thanksgiving." So I did. I packed the pie dish. I packed my cardigan. I packed every ounce of softness I had left in me. And then I waited. Gate 3A at Minneapolis, St. Paul. I stood there, right beneath the arrival sign, my suitcase at my side, coat folded neatly over one arm. Around me, the usual scene. People with flowers, balloons, kids holding signs. There were hugs, there were tears. Everyone was being claimed. I stood there like misplaced luggage. The flight had landed 42 minutes ago. I'd checked twice. I'd reread the text from my daughter-in-law 3 times. "We'll be there. Kids can't wait to see you." A heart emoji at the end. I'd replied, "Flight lands at 3:10. Can't wait to hug everyone." No answer. I kept holding my coat. It was warm inside, but folding it neatly somehow made me feel in control. I didn't sit down. Sitting felt like giving up, like surrendering to the feeling I was trying to deny. I didn't want to look like a woman who had been forgotten. Then my phone buzzed. Not a call, not even a text, just a social media notification. My heart jumped, not because I cared about posts, but because sometimes that's where they remember me. I opened the app, and there they were. Greg, in the navy sweater I'd sent him last Christmas. Malene, tanned and smiling like she always does. The kids, Elliot and Ruby, crowded around a table, candles glowing, turkey, mashed potatoes, and a pie that wasn't mine. Glasses raised in a toast. The caption read, "Full house, full hearts. Happy Thanksgiving from our family to yours." I looked at that photo more than once. There was no mistake. There was no space for me at that table. I didn't cry, not then. I just pulled my coat on, turned away from the arrival hall, and walked. Past the taxis, past the shuttle signs. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew one thing. I wasn't going to stand there waiting for them to remember me. 3 days before that flight, Greg had called. That should have told me something. My son doesn't usually call unless there's a reason. A birthday, a bill, something that needs handling. But this time, his voice was syrupy, too cheerful. "Hey, Mom, got plans for Thanksgiving?" I told him no. Plan to stay home, roast a little chicken, maybe bake a pie if my hands let me, maybe watch an old movie, listen to the radio. Nothing fancy, I'd said. Just me. He paused, just a second. I could feel him thinking. Then he said, "The kids were asking about you. Thought you might like to come here this year. Everyone will be together. Wouldn't feel right without you." That line, "wouldn't feel right without you," it got to me. It's been a long time since anyone made me feel wanted. Needed? Sure. Called on? Depended on? Absolutely. But wanted? That's different. So I said yes. He didn't offer to book the ticket, didn't mention covering the cost. I didn't ask. I had some Christmas money tucked away. I figured this counted as an emergency. After we hung up, I just sat there, holding the phone, fingers still curled around it. Tried to remember the last time I'd felt excited. Not anxious, not obligated, just excited. I booked the flight that evening, found a nonstop on sale, paid the extra $12 for a seat with more legroom. Maybe silly, but if I was flying halfway across the country, I thought I deserved a little comfort. The next day, I shopped. Gifts for the kids, a couple of books, a box of truffles Malene used to like, and for me, I bought myself a new cardigan. Navy blue, soft wool. The kind that makes you feel like maybe you belong in the photograph too. I packed 3 days early, checked the weather, turned the heating down, took out the trash. I didn't tell my bridge group I was going. I didn't want to explain. Maybe deep down, I didn't want to jinx it. Thanksgiving morning, I flew. The airport was packed. People everywhere. Their little rolling bags and neck pillows shaped like animals. I smiled at a baby, met eyes with another older woman reading a paperback across the aisle. We didn't speak, but in that quiet glance, I felt something. Two women, sitting still, carrying stories no one asks about. When the plane landed, I brushed the crumbs from my skirt, wore my good shoes, the black ones with the small heel. I wanted to look like someone you invite, and for a while, I believed I was. Baggage claim to the exit felt longer than it should. Maybe it was the suitcase. Maybe it was something heavier. I passed coffee stands, watched families find each other, a young woman crying into someone's shoulder. I didn't feel bitter, just paused, like life had pressed play for everyone but me. Outside, the sky was flat gray, heavy, like the air itself weighed more. Still, no message, no missed calls. I checked the time. 3:54 p.m. Maybe they were busy. Maybe the turkey was taking too long. Maybe the kids were wild. Harmless reasons, all harmless reasons, sting when you're standing alone at arrivals. I waited another 20 minutes until my knees ached, sat on a bench, watched strangers load into cars that knew their names, watched someone's daughter-in-law bring her mother-in-law a hot chocolate, watched them hug. That hug, quick, tight, real. It landed right where I was hollow. Eventually, I called. No answer. Left a message. I'm here, outside door B, usual spot. Hope everything's okay. I'll wait a little longer. But I already knew. I knew before I reopened the app, before the photo loaded, before the cranberry sauce and candles and caption about hearts being full. It wasn't the first time I'd been forgotten, but it was the first time I admitted it. I stood up, brushed off my coat, and pulled my suitcase behind me. No cab, no Uber, just me and the sidewalk. A man pushing a stroller caught my eye and gave me a tired smile. I nodded back. Strange, isn't it? How strangers sometimes see you more clearly than your own family. It was nearly 5. The air had sharpened, the kind of cold that slips down your collar and quietly asks, "What now?" I didn't answer. I just kept walking. My shoes weren't meant for long walks, but I didn't stop. About half a mile past the rental car lot, I saw it. A squat building, soft yellow light behind fogged-up windows, and a flickering neon sign, Tina's Diner. Someone had taped paper turkeys to the glass. I went in. The bell over the door jingled. Warmth hit me like an old quilt. The place smelled like frying oil and cinnamon. Vinyl booths, cracked stools at the counter, menus that had seen too many years. 6 people maybe, scattered inside. A man in a UPS jacket, an older couple eating without speaking, a waitress with a short ponytail who glanced up when the door swung shut. "Happy Thanksgiving, hun," she said. "Same to you," I replied, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. I picked a booth near the window, sat down. The seat was warm, the table clean enough. I slid off my coat. The waitress brought over a menu. "Kitchen's slow today," she said, handing it to me, "but we've got turkey and pie." "Pie sounds good," I said. "What kind?" She smiled. "Pumpkin, pecan, or key lime?" "Pumpkin and some tea, please." "You got it." I watched the window fog as I waited. My suitcase rested beside me, silent and obedient. My phone vibrated once on the table. I didn't turn it over. I already knew what would be waiting. The pie came, warm, a crooked dollop of whipped cream. The tea, strong and slightly bitter, exactly how I like it. I took a bite, then another. It was the best pie I'd had in years. Not because of the crust, not because of the spices, but because for once, I hadn't made it for anyone else. I ate slowly. No scrolling, no glancing at the door hoping someone might appear and tell me that it had all been a mistake. They weren't coming. Not tonight, maybe not ever. And still, there I was, sitting upright, breathing whole, letting the diner's warmth settle back into my fingers. When the waitress returned with the check, she asked, "Want another slice to go?" I thought about it, then nodded. Yes, for later. She winked. Best decision you'll make all day. She was right. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was true. Back outside, the air cut sharper. The little white bag with my second slice dangled from my hand. My suitcase rolled behind me with a soft, tired rattle. I had nowhere to go. No hotel, no plan. But somehow, I didn't feel lost. Not entirely. There's a strange peace in giving up hope that people who hurt you will someday fix it. The wind picked up as I walked. I remembered the motel sign I'd seen near the rental lot. Valley Inn. Weekly rates available. Beige paint, low building, vending machine by the door. Not much, but the lights were on. Tonight, that felt like enough. The lobby smelled like old carpet. A man behind the counter watched football on a tiny TV. He barely looked up. "Need a room?" he asked. "Yes, just for tonight." Single? I looked down at myself. Good shoes scuffed, cardigan smelling faintly like airplane air. I nodded. Single. He slid over a form. ID and card. I handed them over. While he typed, I glanced at the TV. A team in red and gold was losing. He didn't care. Neither did I. Room 114. End of the row. I took the key, thanked him, walked the strip of cracked sidewalk to my room. It was exactly what I expected. 2 mismatched lamps, a bedspread patterned in tired browns, a TV older than my children. But the heater worked. The bathroom was surprisingly clean. I peeled off my shoes and sat at the edge of the bed. My feet ached. My back ached more. But my heart, the part that should have shattered, felt oddly whole. I stared at the phone for a long time before turning it over. 3 missed calls from Greg, 2 from Eileen, 1 text. "Mom, where are you?" No apology, no explanation, just confusion, like I was the one who had forgotten. I didn't reply. Instead, I unzipped my suitcase, pulled out my little notebook, the one where I jot grocery lists and things I never say out loud, and wrote on a fresh page. I am not spare. I am not extra. I am not a side dish at someone else's table. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I underlined them. Years ago, I would have cried. Even last year, I think I would have, but not tonight. Tonight, clarity replaced tears. A cold water kind of clarity. Bracing. Clean. Because it wasn't just about today. Not the airport, not the photo. It was every year before this. The birthdays skipped, the messages unanswered, the invitations that always felt like obligations, never joy. I remember Christmas 2 years back. Milene saying, "We'd love to have you if it's not too much trouble getting here." That pause in her voice, that hesitation. I remembered the ham I cooked anyway, the bus ride. Greg's 40th birthday, the leather wallet I had engraved, his group text saying, "Thanks for the gifts, everyone." Everyone. Ruby's school play. I'd found the live stream myself, watched it alone, no one ever mentioned it. And still, I kept showing up. Until today. Sometimes it takes standing alone on a curb in another city to finally see the truth that's been in front of you for years. I wasn't part of their life. I was a convenience, a seasonal side dish. I looked around the motel room. Ugly, honest, functional. Maybe the most honest place I'd been in a long time. I got up, made motel tea from the little plastic coffee maker, sat cross-legged on the bed with my second slice of pie. No china plate, no linen napkin, just a paper bag and a plastic fork. And still, it tasted like something I'd earned. The motel ceiling had a thin crack that ran above the bed like a road. And for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I was. The crack in the ceiling looked like a map. I lay there, watching it, while the heater groaned and kicked, pushing thin warmth into the small room. Outside, I could hear the wind scraping against the siding, engines humming somewhere out on the freeway. A man 2 doors down coughed, a deep, miserable sound. Somewhere, water flushed. It wasn't a peaceful night, but it was an honest one. Around 2 a.m., I drifted off at last. The scratchy blanket pulled up to my chin, my notebook still open beside me. I slept in my clothes, too tired to change, too worn to unpack again. Morning came early. My body doesn't let me sleep past 6, no matter how long I've been retired, as if waking up early is the last useful thing I can still do. I brewed weak coffee in the in-room machine and watched the sky pale through the blinds. The pie was gone, the tea was gone, but the quiet stayed. At 7:12, my phone buzzed. "Mom, I'm so sorry. There was confusion about the pickup. We thought your flight was tomorrow. Can you come to the house today? The kids really want to see you." From Greg. No mention of the photo, no explanation for the dinner without me, no apology, just confusion and a question that felt like a command. Can you? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I set the phone down. I didn't answer. Instead, I got dressed, brushed my hair, dabbed on a little lipstick. Not for them. I wasn't going. It was for me. A small act of dignity. A reminder that even if no one else cared, I still got to decide how I presented myself to the world. Even if no one was looking. The motel lobby had a carafe of burned coffee and a bowl of bruised apples. I took an apple, slipped it into my bag, and checked out. The man behind the counter didn't look up from his football highlights. Outside, the air was sharp and clean. The wind had quieted. Above me stretched that brittle blue November sky, cold, endless, and clear. I didn't head to the airport right away. I had something I needed to do first. About a mile down the road, tucked between a gas station and a shuttered tire shop, I found it. A small postal annex. I stepped inside. The place smelled faintly of dust and ink. The clerk behind the counter was young, her nail polish chipped. She smiled when she saw me. "Envelope and a pen, please." "Sure. Do you need stamps?" "Yes, one for Massachusetts." She handed it over without asking questions. I wrote the address from memory. Emma Wexler, 12 Pond Hollow Lane, Worcester, MA 01609. Emma, my granddaughter. Greg's first marriage, the only one who still called just to talk. She was 23 now, studying nursing. She sent me photos of her cat, told me about her exams, asked me for my cornbread stuffing. I stared at the empty envelope for a moment. Then I tore out a page from my notebook. "Emma, darling, you once told me I was your safe place." Hearing that meant more to me than most things in this world. This Thanksgiving didn't go as planned. I flew across the country for a table I wasn't meant to sit at. But in the quiet, I found something I didn't expect. I found room to remember who I am, without waiting for someone else to say it first. I kept writing. Not bitter, not traumatic, just honest. When I sealed the envelope, I felt lighter. At 10:35, I booked a ticket home, same airline, same gate, but I wasn't the same woman who'd boarded before. The flight wasn't until evening, so I found a little cafe near the terminal. Big windows, decent scones. I sat there with tea and my pen, scribbling down the things I'd swallowed for too many years. I didn't write to Greg or Malene. I didn't explain where I was. They'd see the missed calls. Maybe they'd wonder, maybe not. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Around 4 o'clock, the light shifted, that soft golden haze that makes even parking lots look like postcards. I watched the little boy run toward a minivan, his backpack bouncing, his grandmother trailing behind. He turned, saw her, and ran back, grabbed her hand like it was the only steady thing in the world. I watched until they disappeared. Then, softly, I said it aloud, not angry, not broken. I deserved that too. When it was time, I boarded my flight. Half full, a blessing. I had a whole row to myself. The seat by the window was cold when I sat down. I left it that way. For once, I didn't feel the need to fold my coat, didn't smooth the belt across my lap to make myself small and neat. For once, I didn't need to make myself palatable for someone else's comfort. The flight attendant gave me a soft smile as she placed a plastic cup of water on my tray. Heading home or leaving it? I met her eyes, thought about it. Both, I said, in a way. She didn't ask for more, just nodded. That quiet understanding, a rare, gentle thing. I turned toward the window as the plane rumbled down the runway, the city shrinking beneath me, its gray roads crossing and crisscrossing like the lines on the motel ceiling. And for the first time in a long time, I let the distance grow between us without trying to close it. Faded scars. That's what the highways below looked like as the plane lifted, the sky opening wide, blue above, blue below, and nothing between except the hum of engines and my own steady breathing. I thought grief would come again, that familiar wave. I waited for it, the way you wait for turbulence. But it didn't. I didn't feel peace either, not yet. What I felt was stillness, present, rooted. That was new. Halfway through the flight, I reached for my phone, telling myself I only wanted to check the time. But of course, the notifications poured in. 4 texts from Greg, 1 voicemail. Mom, I'm really sorry. Please call me. The kids were asking where you were. Malene said she thought you knew we moved dinner up a day. Can we talk? I didn't open the voicemail. I didn't delete it either. I let it sit there, the way I had once sat, waiting. I switched the phone off. When the plane landed, it was already dark. My small city glowed softly below, familiar, unassuming. The shuttle driver who took me back to the parking lot was older, with a twinkle in his eye. He asked, "Family visit?" I smiled. Not exactly. At home, my porch light was still on. I'd left it burning like I expected to return from something whole and warm. Instead, I came back carrying pieces. My house smelled like lavender and old wood. The radiator clanked to life as I set down my suitcase and hung up my coat. I moved slowly, not from age, but intention. I made chamomile tea and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Greg once spilled gravy, where Emma cut snowflakes from napkins, where Malene once sat, eyes fixed on her phone. I looked at the room as if meeting it again. Then, I opened the drawer beside the fridge, the one marked Greg, One marked Emma. I pulled Greg's first. It was thick. Receipts, copies of checks, tuition payments, a mechanic's invoice I paid when his transmission failed, the mortgage papers I co-signed in 2010, a preschool deposit I'd fronted for Ruby, scrawled with Melane's handwriting. We'll pay you back after the bonus hits. They never did. I turned the pages carefully, like tending old bruises. Not in anger, not in sorrow, in clarity. Then I opened Emma's folder. Thinner. Birthday cards, photos, her college graduation announcement printed on cheap cardstock but saved like treasure. Notes in bubbly handwriting, a postcard from Vermont. Wish you were here. Fall is wild and wonderful. I closed both folders. Then I picked up my notebook. And this time, I didn't write feelings. I wrote a plan. The next morning, I was at the bank before it opened. A thin layer of frost coated the steps. I climbed slowly, wearing my old boots and that same navy cardigan. It didn't match my scarf. I didn't care. The teller greeted me with polite warmth. "Good morning, Mrs. Wexler. How can we help you today?" "I'd like to speak with someone about my accounts, all of them." A few minutes later, I was sitting in a small, glass-walled office that smelled like printer ink. Natalie, my account manager, introduced herself. She looked like someone who did yoga and kept almonds in her purse. "What can I help you with today?" "I want to suspend all automatic payments, effective immediately." She hesitated. "All of them?" "Yes." Her eyebrows lifted as she scanned the screen. "That includes recurring transfers to family members, tuition, car insurance, and scheduled gifts to several charities." "Keep the charities, stop the rest." Another pause. "Do you want to talk about why?" I looked at her. Really looked. "No," I said simply. "I've already spent enough time explaining myself." She nodded. Understood. While she worked, I sat in silence and watched the world outside her window. A mother strapping a toddler into a car seat, an old man with a walker, a delivery truck idling too long. Life went on. "Done," Natalie said. "Everything's suspended. I can prepare full cancellation paperwork if you'd like to finalize that tomorrow." "I will." She hesitated. "You also have a power of attorney on file, Gregory Wexler. Do you wish to keep that in place?" My heart didn't race. It slowed. "No," I said. "Revoke it." She printed the form. I signed. By the time I stepped outside, the frost had melted. I didn't rush. I stopped at the bakery on the corner, bought myself a fresh roll, walked the long way home. It wasn't about punishment. It was about boundaries. About understanding that love isn't built on sacrifice alone. It needs light. It needs truth. Back at home, I washed the pie dish, gently, dried it, put it away. Maybe someday I'd make another pie. Maybe not. But I wouldn't make one for people who left me standing at a curb. That afternoon, I called Mr. Altman, my lawyer of 30 years.
He'd handled the house purchase, my husband's will, and the first draft of mine. His voice was warm, but cautious. "Mrs. Wexler, what can I do for you?" "I need to update my estate plan, and I want to set up a trust for Emma." He didn't ask why. People like him, they've seen every shape disappointment can take. We scheduled a time. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity. That night, I sat on the porch, blanket around my shoulders, tea cooling on the railing. A few neighbors passed by. One waved, one didn't. The street was quiet, and I felt not okay, not healed, but steady. Like I had finally stopped knocking on a door that was never going to open. The next morning, the sky hung low and soft, that pale winter gray that wraps itself around rooftops like gauze. I dressed slowly, not from fatigue, but because I didn't want to rush what came next. At 9 sharp, I walked into Mr. Altman's office. Same little 2-story building, same green shutters, same faint smell of floor polish and old paper. The gold-framed photos hadn't changed. His children, his boat, the bulldog wearing the Santa hat. Mr. Altman stood as I entered, still as formal as he was 20 years ago. "Mrs. Wexler," he said, extending his hand. "And you, Mr. Altman." We sat down. Same leather chairs, same ticking wall clock, same stack of forms. His glasses were thicker now. His mustache had gone white. "What are we changing today?" he asked softly. "My will," I said, "and I want to set up a trust. Everything I own, every cent, every asset, I want it protected. And I want it to go to Emma. Only Emma." He didn't blink, just nodded, pulling out a legal pad. "I assume we're removing Gregory and Mullane." "Yes. They've had enough from me." At that, he looked up briefly, but said nothing.
"I wanted airtight," I continued. "No loopholes. Emma's the beneficiary. She gets everything. Until then, she can access the trust for education, housing, healthcare, or emergencies. I'll decide what counts as an emergency." He allowed himself the faintest smile. "You've thought this through." "I have." "And your home, pension, CDs, everything in your name moves into the trust?" "Exactly." He leaned back. "Emma's a good girl. Always was." My throat tightened. She's the only one who still sees me as a person, not a purse. Mr. Altman didn't flinch. He just said, "Then let's make sure your wishes are honored." For the next hour, we worked. He asked questions, I gave firm answers. No second guessing, no benefit of the doubt. When we finished, he gathered the paperwork and looked at me, not with pity, but with the quiet kind of respect. "I'll have the final draft ready in a few days. We'll notarize and finalize." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. Outside, the air had turned crisp. I walked home slowly, stopping at the florist for a small poinsettia. I didn't decorate much anymore, but I wanted something bright for the kitchen table, something alive. When I stepped inside, the phone rang. I almost let it go to voicemail. I didn't. "Grandma? Emma." Her voice was breathless, nervous, warm. "I got your letter." I sat down at the kitchen table, hand trembling slightly. "You did?" "I didn't know what happened," she said. "Dad and Marilyn said you canceled your flight last minute. They made it sound like you just changed your mind." "Of course they did." My voice dropped. "I was there." "What?" "I landed. I waited. I saw the photos." She went silent. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I know, sweetheart. That's not on you. I should have called. I should have checked. You didn't know. A pause. I missed you so much that day, Emma whispered. It didn't feel right without you. For the first time since that airport, tears pricked behind my eyes, but they didn't fall. Thank you, I said softly. That means more than you know. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was full. Grandma, she said, finally. Can I come visit? Next weekend? I've got a break from classes. I can take the train. My heart hurt, in a good way. Of course, I said. The guest room's ready. I'll bring the chessboard. You still play? I never stopped. We hung up a few minutes later. I sat there at the kitchen table, hand resting on the phone. And for once, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. That Saturday, just after noon, I stood at the station in my warmest coat. The platform smelled like diesel and rain. In my hands, I held a paper bag, a sandwich and an apple, just in case. Then I saw her. Emma stepped off the 1137 from Worcester, wearing a hoodie and jeans, curls tucked under a beanie, her canvas bag slung over one shoulder. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her, but when she spotted me, her face broke into something pure. She ran straight to me. She hugged me like she meant it. "Hi, Grandma," she whispered into my shoulder. "Hi, baby," I said. "You're here." The drive home was quiet. She watched the streets like she was memorizing them. I drove slower than usual, letting her take it in. At the house, she set her bag down like she'd never left, curled up in the corner of the couch, legs tucked under, the way she always had. The chessboard waited on the coffee table. We played a game. She won, then another. I won that one, fair and square. Later, we sat at the kitchen table, tea cooling between us. The poinsettia I'd bought sat in the center, red and alive. "You read my letter again on the train?" Emma said softly. "I've never seen you write like that." "I've never had to," I said. "I used to think being quiet was grace, but now I think it just made me easy to ignore." She looked up. "I never ignored you." "I know." She hesitated. "Dad doesn't know I'm here." I figured. "He called a couple nights ago, asked if I'd seen you since Thanksgiving." "What'd you tell him?" "I didn't lie. I just said we hadn't talked yet." I nodded. "That was kind." She shook her head. "It wasn't kindness. It was exhaustion." That surprised me. Emma had always been the careful one, the peacekeeper. But hearing her say that, steady and quiet, told me something. She was growing strong. "You don't have to pretend here," I said. Emma nodded. "Neither do you." We sat there, quiet, sipping our tea. And somewhere in that silence, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need Greg or Merlene to explain, to apologize, or to spin another excuse about what went wrong. I didn't need another too late invitation or a voicemail filled with justifications. I had this: my house, my tea, my granddaughter. I had myself. That evening, Emma offered to make dinner. Pasta with garlic and spinach. Simple. I grated cheese while we talked about everything, about nothing. Afterward, we watched a silly movie and laughed harder than the film deserved. The kind of laughter you only share with someone who feels safe. Before bed, she sat beside me on the couch, quiet. "Grandma," she said softly, "I don't want to lose you." "You won't? Promise?" "I can't promise forever," I told her, "but I'm not going anywhere yet." She smiled, then leaned in and hugged me. Slower this time, but no less real.
After she went to sleep, I sat in the living room with the clock ticking softly behind me. I looked at the photos on the mantel. Some faces had faded. Some frames stood empty now. But one photo remained steady. Me holding Emma as a baby. My hair darker, my face softer, but my grip around her small body just as firm. I looked at that picture a long time. Then I stood up, turned off the light, and went to bed. Emma left Sunday afternoon. We lingered on the porch before her train. I handed her a container of leftovers, a scarf I'd knitted last winter, and something quieter, something wordless, that I knew she'd carry without needing me to explain. She kissed my cheek and promised to call Friday. Then she was gone. A quick wave from the window, her breath fogging the glass. I stood there until the train shrank from view. Then I went back inside. The house was quiet, but not lonely. It was the kind of silence that followed something true. I moved through the rooms slowly, picked up mugs, folded the blanket, put the chessboard back on its shelf. When I reached the kitchen, I opened the drawer. Greg's files sat thick with papers. Emma's folder remained light. But that afternoon, I realized it wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. I pulled out a yellow notepad and began listing every payment I'd made for them in the past 15 years. Not just money I'd handed over, but repairs, school fundraisers, down payments, medical deductibles, groceries, legal fees, all the quiet help, all the invisible sacrifices, line by line. By the time I stopped, 4 pages lay filled. Looking at it, I didn't feel generous. I felt used. Not in anger, just in recognition. I had funded their life. In return, I'd received politeness, hollow birthdays, tired smiles, a seat near the coat rack when there was no room at the main table. I wasn't angry. I was done. At 3:17 p.m., my phone rang. Greg. I didn't pick up. A voicemail followed, then a text. "Hi, Mom. Just checking in. Hope everything's okay. Let me know when you're free to talk." Vague. Casual. Like I hadn't stood waiting for him in a city he didn't bother to remember. I deleted the voicemail. The text stayed unread. That night, I lit a candle. Not for any occasion, just for the stillness, for the quiet. I poured myself a glass of wine, a good bottle I'd been saving for a real holiday. I set one place at the table, heated soup, ate slowly, not scrolling, not waiting. I sat inside my own life. Later, I opened my email, found the folder marked travel. The receipt for my Thanksgiving trip was still there. Round trip, return completed. I forwarded it to myself, added a subject line, proof of departure and return. No rescue, no reunion, just me. I didn't send it to anyone else. I didn't need to.
The next morning, I called Mr. Altman. "I've been thinking," I said. "I want to add something to the trust." "Of course," he replied. "What's on your mind?" "I want Emma to be the sole executor, but I also want to attach a letter. Not legal, personal." "You can include a statement of intent," he said. "It won't affect legality, but it can explain your reasons." "Good. then I'll write it. That same morning, I sat down at the kitchen table and I began. To whoever is reading this after I'm gone, if you're wondering why things were divided this way, let me say clearly, this is not punishment. It's honesty. I've spent my life giving quietly, consistently. But love without respect isn't love. And presence without care isn't family. I chose the one person who saw me before I disappeared. I didn't finish the letter that day. I wasn't in a hurry. Some truths deserve to be written slowly. Tuesday came and went without a call from Emma, not because she'd forgotten, because we'd agreed. She had clinicals, a long shift. I'll call Friday, after my shift, same time. I trusted her. That morning, though, my phone rang. Malene. Her name lit up the screen like a warning. I let it ring out. Then came the text. Hi, Irene. Hope you're well. Greg mentioned you've been hard to reach lately. Let's catch up soon. No punctuation where it mattered. No warmth where it counted. Catch up, as if we were neighbors or old co-workers. Not family. Not after 15 years. Not after everything. I set the phone down. I didn't offer her tea. I didn't ask why she was here. I just waited. She stood there in the middle of the kitchen, shifting her weight from one heel to the other, glancing at the folded towels on the table, the flowers by the sink, the single plate in the drying rack. We've been trying to reach you, she said finally. Greg's been worried. I nodded once, not as agreement, but acknowledgement, letting the words land where they would. And now you're here, I said. Malene hesitated, then dropped the tote onto a chair, like it was heavier than she wanted to admit. I didn't know about the airport, about any of it. I believed her, but that didn't change anything. She went on. Greg thought you knew about the schedule change. He assumed someone told you. And he assumed that if no one did, I said softly, that it wasn't his problem. That stopped her. She didn't deny it. I'm sorry, she said at last. But she said it like someone who had practiced it in the car. I gestured to the chair. Sit, if you're going to. She did. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The house filled the space between us. The hum of the fridge, the soft clink of the wind chime outside the window. The lilac scent settled into the corners. Finally, Malene looked up, not as polished now. I don't know what you want from us. I met her gaze, steady. I don't want anything, I said. That's the difference. But you're angry. No, I'm finished. She flinched at that, just slightly. I wasn't trying to shut you out. I let the silence answer that. I just thought... She trailed off. Greg isn't perfect. You know that. I did know that. He's scared, she whispered, like it was some kind of secret. He doesn't know how to fix this. I'm not something to fix. Malene looked down. I waited. And then, without warning, her voice cracked.
He misses you. Does he? I asked, quietly, not cruel, just curious. She didn't answer. I stood gathering the folded towels. I'm not mad, Malene. Not anymore. But I'm not waiting either. Not for explanations, not for apologies. I've done enough of that. So that's it? She said softly. I looked at her then, really looked. That's it. Tears welled in her eyes, but I knew they weren't for me. They were for the discomfort of consequence. She stood slowly, smoothing her skirt, adjusting her bag. I wish you'd come home. I almost smiled at that. I am home. She didn't know how to reply. At the door, she paused. If Greg calls again, he can. And if you don't answer, that's my choice. For the first time since arriving, Malene said nothing. She stepped out onto the porch. The air had shifted again, lighter somehow. I hope you find peace, Irene. I already have. She nodded once, then walked down the steps, her heels clicking on the pavement like punctuation marks. I closed the door. And this time, I locked it. Not out of fear, but finality.
Then I turned back to my house, to my life, to myself. I stood back when I was done, looking at the lights. Not perfect, not symmetrical, but warm and enough. Neighbors walked past now and then, some glancing up, some not. A few waved. I waved back. Inside, the house smelled like pine and tea. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. I spent the rest of the day slow, reading not to pass time, but to enjoy it. Writing lists, not of tasks, but of thoughts. At one point, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked older than I remembered, and softer, and stronger. None of it felt like a contradiction. Late that afternoon, the phone rang once. Greg. I watched it, then let it go silent. Not out of anger, out of choice. That night, I didn't light the candles out of loneliness, but as a ritual, a declaration. I ate slowly, drank tea, sat with my own presence like it was an old friend returning after a long trip. At one point, I looked toward the door, not expecting anyone, but simply aware of the quiet. And I smiled, because for the first time in a long time, no one was missing, not even me. I didn't do it for neighbors or nostalgia. I did it because I wanted the house to glow for me for once. Inside, I put the kettle on, turned the old radio dial, and let slow jazz drift through the rooms. I used to decorate for the kids, stockings with their names, cookies shaped like stars, the old felt angel Emma made in kindergarten. But this year, there were no stockings, no extra chairs, no waiting. This year, I lit the fire early and said one place for tea, my own. By the time the sun dipped behind the houses across the street, the phone rang. It was Greg again. This time, I answered. Mom, his voice sounded thinner than I remembered. I'm here, calm, steady. There was a pause. I didn't think you'd pick up. I know. A longer silence. Then, I saw the paperwork from the attorney, the trust, the changes. I figured you would. His breath caught, like he expected something softer,
I don't understand. After everything. Exactly, I said. After everything. You mean the money? He asked, unsure. I mean the pattern, I replied. The forgetting, the late calls, the missed birthdays, the airport, the photo. That wasn't intentional. No, I said softly. It was worse. It was convenient. Silence. Then quieter. You're punishing us. But it sounded less like an accusation and more like a hope. That I'd deny it, reassure him, fold. No, I said. I'm releasing myself from obligation, from old loyalties that only moved in one direction, from the guilt I carried so long I forgot what lightness felt like.
I never thought it would come to this. I know. We're still your family. No, Greg. I was your family. You haven't been mine in a long time. That was the end. Not with shouting, not with resolution, just with the truth, said softly enough to echo for years. I hung up, stood at the window, watched the street lamp flicker on. The next day, I mailed a small package to Emma. Inside, the silver earrings, wrapped in soft cloth, a copy of the trust, and a note. These are yours. Not because you asked, but because you showed up. Wear them when you feel uncertain. You're never invisible in this house. Not then, not now, not ever. She called 3 days later, crying and laughing at once. Grandma, she said, her voice trembling, I don't know what to say. You already did, I answered. The day you asked if you could come visit. The day you came without needing a reason. That night, I lit the fireplace and sat in its warmth. Outside, the season's first snow dusted the street. I watched it fall, slow and clean. And I thought of all the Thanksgivings that came before. The ones I cooked through pain. The ones I sat through quietly. The ones I was invited to as an afterthought. And then this one, the one I gave myself. No carving knives, no tablecloth, no second helpings. Just a walk, a diner, a slice of pie, and the clearest thing I'd ever tasted. Not bitterness, freedom. And if you're reading this, if you've ever waited for someone who forgot to wait for you, listen close. You can stop now. You can light a candle for yourself. You can buy your own damn pie. And you can begin again. Right here, right now. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to know you're not alone. Your silence has value. Your seat is your own. And you don't need permission to keep it.